Thank you so much for sticking around for all three parts, and this is part 3. And we certainly appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to circle back. Craig, you clarified that shed a lot of clarity on this whole issue for me. I don't know about you, Rory.
Yes.
But everything you said, now all the pieces are falling into place. And I just wanted to circle back really quickly because I'm a gold guy, and we did mention gold really briefly. And I just looked it up because I had recalled this happening, and it was a little more visible when Venezuela did their gold deal with Goldman Sachs because Venezuela needed cash. And I had recalled that I thought the same thing happened with Ecuador. And lo and behold, in 2014, Goldman Sachs went in and arranged a swap that involved Ecuador's gold. So they lent Ecuador money in exchange for the gold to securitize that loan. Why is it, if gold is a pet rock, that Goldman Sachs seems interested in getting a hold of Venezuela's and Ecuador's gold in order to lend them money? I mean, I thought we always just went in there and lent these countries money directly without securing it with something like gold.
Well, what we usually secure it with is they have to agree to sell off their oil rights, the mineral rights, agricultural lands, accept military bases, cut their state pensions, cut social services. This is, see, the way it works, and John Perkins explains it very clearly. First, the American banks go in and convince them to take some loans on the basis that it will solve this or that problem for them. But it never does. The process is designed to get them indebted so they can't pay. So then the IMF comes and says, well, look, we'll save your credit rating by paying off your creditors, but you have to repay us. And so the way you repay us is you raise money by selling off your national assets and by curtailing social spending so that your revenues from taxation don't go to state pensions, they don't go to education, healthcare. You give that money to us, and then you sell off all the mineral rights, oil rights, whatever you've got. And with those monies, they come to us too, and then that pays off your loan. So the whole reason for American lending in Latin America or anywhere in the world has always been to set the country up for looting. So the question really is, why did Goldman Sachs want the gold instead of the oil rights? and you may have already answered this in some of your own postings on your site about maybe the West is running out of gold for delivery, because the Asians seem to keep demanding more and more. So where is the gold coming from to make these deliveries? Because if we don't make the deliveries, then the price of gold is going to explode, and it's going to bring a lot of doubt about the dollar. And so maybe they just need the gold to make the deliveries. Maybe that's the answer.
I think that's the answer. I just wanted people to hear it from someone besides me, because I just find it ironic how the Wall Street Journal comes out and says gold's a pet rock. It just sits there. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't earn interest. And yet nowadays, whenever we go into a country and try and take control of them, the first thing we take is their gold. It happened in Libya. It happened in
Ukraine.
Yep.
I'm sure it's happened in Iraq in some form. We just haven't heard about it. And then, I mean, Goldman had been working on Venezuela's gold for at least a year, and they finally had to capitulate because they needed the money. And then the same thing happened in Ecuador. So I just find it ironic. And the press, of course, doesn't point this out. I find it ironic that the linchpin of the deals with Venezuela and Ecuador was around getting a hold of their gold.
Right.
So I guess it must be something more than just a pet rock.
Of course. And I want to thank you, Dr. Roberts, for pointing that out, because the question that you posed is the question that I've been asking for about 3 years. Where's the gold coming from? And the only place that makes sense that it's coming from is the theft of gold from these other countries, because there is no gold anywhere else.
Well, that's the most logical explanation. And it does explain the shift to gold from oil rights and mineral rights and everything they've always claimed before. I guess if Greece had any gold, I guess they took that too, but they're still taking everything else in Greece.
Well, I thought it had come out when all that stuff was happening that the Nazis had taken Greece's gold and they were still trying to get it back.
Maybe. I don't know.
That was the first thing Hitler would take when he would move into a country. He'd go and grab their gold before the Rothschilds got it.
We need to remember, too, that if gold doesn't pay interest, neither do bonds, neither do savings accounts, neither do money market funds.
And all of those are actually losing money because they are tied to the dollar, which is losing value.
They're tied to zero interest rates because the reported inflation is zero, but not the real inflation.
Exactly.
Real inflation is quite high. I saw John Williams' latest statement was it's over 8% annually. So if you've got zero interest rates, you're really losing, I think John said 8.4%. Now, if you compound that over a few years, you see what's happened to the real value of your money. And anyone who goes to grocery stores, unless they're buying the lowest quality stuff, can see constant price rises. If you go to hardware stores, you can see that. Anything, clothing stores. I mean, just look what a pair of jeans cost now. Almost as much as a suit used to cost.
That's true. It's amazing.
It is true. It's very true.
And they tell us there's no inflation. Well, we've talked about this before. There's no inflation because they don't measure it. If a price of something in the basket of goods goes up, they throw it out and stick in something low price. If a price goes up, they say, oh, it's not a price rise. It's a quality improvement. They don't count it. So this is how they do that. It's the same how they do with unemployment. We have 5% unemployment because they don't count unemployment.
No, it's not 5%, Dr. Roberts. It's 4.9.
But nobody can find a job. It's and the media talks about these things like they're real. Like there is 4.9% unemployment. That's full employment, essentially. There is zero inflation. Well, but it's all how they create a matrix. People live in lies, and they just hear them constantly. But I think what we're seeing with the support for Trump is that people know, and for Sanders, that there's not a recovery. They don't have jobs. Their income is falling, not rising. They're struggling. They see that. It doesn't fit with the story. The experience of masses of Americans doesn't fit with the official story. And so they're turning to other kinds of leaders. And we should be happy. And we shouldn't worry about what Trump's real position is or Sanders' real position. That's not what's really important. What's important is that people are starting to catch on.
Starting
that
to wake
establishment in Washington and New York does not serve them. The American economy does not serve them. The political process does not serve them. Essentially, Americans are colonized. They're serfs. They're exploited.
Free-range prisoners.
They're prisoners. All their hopes are snuffed out. Kids went to university. They got huge student loans, and they can't get a job and they have to go home and live with their parents. I mean, even the Federal Reserve reported that 52% of American 25-year-olds are living at home with their parents. So if half the young generation can't establish an independent household, what kind of country is this? It's a superpower? Really? It's a third world basket case. That's what the United States is. It's a third world basket case. Increasingly, the jobs are part-time. The payroll jobs, that's not the number of employment. That's the number of jobs. Many of those jobs are held by the same person. You got to have 2 or 3 of them to make ends meet. Well, this is India 30 years ago, 40 years ago. This is not a superpower. The people, what are the prospects for Americans? They can't get out of debt. They can't pay down their credit card balances. They can barely make the minimum payment. And as we all know, the minimum payment means the balance is growing, because the minimum payment is less than the interest on that month's credit card account.
Yeah, it's like 1% or 2% of the total balance.
Yeah,
that's the minimum.
Yeah, and so if you're just paying the minimum, your balance is growing every month.
Every month. Every day, actually.
If you miss the minimum payment, for the next 6 months, your interest rate jumps to 29.4%.
Plus, you get assessed a late fee.
Plus a less fee. So, there's no way out for these people. And there's no way out for the kids with these huge loans, and they can't get a job. And we have been plundered. We have been plundered. The elite has plundered us. They began by moving our jobs offshore in order that their capital gains would go up and their executive bonuses would go up, because moving the jobs offshore greatly reduced the labor costs and greatly raised profits. So that's how the plundering began, and then they began moving all of the university-type jobs, software engineering, information technology, research, design, now a lot of accounting. Things are just disappearing. You come out of college and the jobs you thought they were there, they're now in India. So you have that. And then what happens to the tax base? Not just the federal, but state and local. It's gone. Not just from all the plants moving, but from the loss of individual income taxes or sales taxes, because they haven't got any money to buy things with. So then it comes back to state pensions, state employees, all the rest. We now have cities that are in ruins, like Detroit. Once the manufacturing industrial powerhouse, it's like a ruined place. It's shrunk down to a tiny size.
I think the last figures I heard, that Detroit, the population had shrunk back to the mid 1950s levels.
Something like that. And huge areas of what was formerly the city are just desolate. Just boarded up, abandoned houses, burned down houses. There are no public services in vast areas of what once comprised Detroit. But this is the same like in St. Louis. There's so many of the cities. Some years ago, I did a report on the shrinkage in the populations. It's quite astounding. But not just Detroit. Of a whole range of cities associated in all of the minds of people of my generation with American industrial prowess. They're now ruins. And you can't do this without ruining the prospects of the country. And if you look at the policies, you see we not only offshore the jobs, but whatever income people have left is financialized. It's drained off into the service of debt. The entirety of American bank loans simply exist in order to finance the change of ownership of existing assets. And so as you build, this is why debt has grown so much relative to the economy, to the real economy. So increasingly, what income is left in the hands of people is drained off in the service of debt. It can't go to the purchase of goods and services. So the economy can't grow. That's why there's been no recovery.
It never will be.
Never will be. It can't be. Because when you financialize things like that, Michael Hudson is very good on this. But when you financialize things like that, look, just think about mortgages. It used to be you could be lent a mortgage that would absorb 25% of your monthly income or 25% of your annual income. That could go to mortgage service. Well, now it's up to 50. So 50% of your income is going to mortgage service. What's happened to your discretionary spending? It's disappeared. Because the rest of it, servicing car loans, paying utilities, right?
Yep.
And what else is it? This is why there's no consumer demand, no growth in real retail sales. How does real retail sales grow when the underlying incomes of the people aren't growing, except for the 1%? But you see, the 1% is limited in its consumption. One person can't consume what 100 people.
Or
consume different things. They consume different things: helicopters, jet planes, yachts. But there's very little influx from that into the real economy. So the economy is just sort of stagnating and declining. I predicted this would be the case in 2004. I predicted this. I said in 20 years, the United States would be a third world country. Well, it's only been 12 years, and we're just about there.
I remember that. I do remember that.
Yep. And we're essentially just about there. And there are all kinds of smaller towns and cities that once had some prosperity. You go through them and you look, all the strip malls. What are they now? They're tattoo parlors and tanning salons. I mean, there's nothing else. It's just, and half of them are closed.
Yep.
Half of the storefronts are closed, and there'll be a tattoo parlor, tanning salon. It's just, and people think the streets in the United States are paved with gold. Foreigners think that. What else? Guys, got anything else? Or we used up the time? I think we used up the time.
I think you've been more than generous with your time, Craig. We really appreciate it.
Yes, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Well, I enjoy you two a lot, and I'm learning a lot from both of you. And Dave, we got to get on writing another article before long.
I agree. I'm watching gold now. They've got it knocked down $10. They're having a little more trouble with silver, but maybe we might be able to work on something there.
Well, if they lose control of those prices, they got a problem with the dollar.
They got a problem with a lot of things besides the dollar.
Yes.
Well, the problems with the dollar produces.
Right. Yeah. That's true.
That's it, and that's why, of course, we have our Japanese vassal and our European central bank puppet printing their money hand over fist. Because the faster they print, the better it makes the dollar look.
That's right.
So here, isn't this amazing that the Japanese central bank is ruining Japan for the sake of the American dollar, for the sake of American hegemony, and the European central bank, of course, run by Goldman Sachs, right?
Yep.
Draghi is a Goldman Sachs
Yep.
executive, right? Former executive. So he's printing hand over fist, and that's also saving the dollar. And I guess we're going to have the euro back to a 1-in-1 basis for the dollar, aren't we? And
So it's headed in that direction.
yeah, and gosh knows the once strong yen what it'll be. So that's the game. I think we can all keep our eyes on. If they lose control of the dollar, they have lost it, and that's how they can keep the system rigged. I think they can keep everything rigged until they lose control of the dollar.
That's what I came to that conclusion a while ago.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that it gets out into the financial press and that people start to understand what's really going on. And I enjoyed talking to you both. All the best.
Likewise, Craig. We really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate y'all. See you later.
Thank you.
See you. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.